In this lesson, we will learn how to use 3ds Max's Morpher modifier. The Morpher modifier is typically used for facial rigging in animation. With it, we can sculpt a specific expression or a specific form that we can then apply back to our base mesh to see that transition from what we've sculpted and then back to the base mesh. So this comes in handy in facial rigging where bones that sculpt the face aren't quite giving us the exact expression we'd like to see. So what we can then do is mold the exact expression that the character should have. And the usefulness of this is, of course, we can keep our characters consistent with what has been drawn out on the character's model sheet. Alright, so what we'll do is use it to create a sniff animation. Our character's looking around, and let's have him kind of sniff after several frames. This is going to be really cool. Let's go ahead and get started. Now, the first thing we need to do is make sure that our creature is in its neutral pose. That way, when we start to sculpt, we're working from the original position, and that will eliminate the possibility of our mesh being slightly offset from that initial state. Alright, so we just need to make sure again that our character is back in what would be its T stance, so we don't have any weird deformations. Alright, so we'll go ahead and hold down Control Alt, and we'll start to pull with the left mouse button our track bar over to our right, and we'll go ahead and add that neutral stance here on frame -10. So we can always get back to this if we ever need to, but we'll still make sure that the animation starts at frame 0. Alright, so once we're at -10, we'll go ahead and press F3. Let's go ahead and grab the creature's head bone and the torso. We'll enable auto key. Again, we'll want to save this pose out. And now we'll go ahead and right click and choose transform to 0. Alright, excellent. So we can now go ahead and turn off auto key, press F3, and we're ready to start working on this expression. So let's say we go ahead and head over to layers so we can unfreeze the creature layer. And what we'll want to do is go ahead and select the mesh and clone it to create our target shape. So we'll now go to our move tool. We'll hold down the shift key and just drag away. Let's go ahead and give this a name of sniff. And we'll make sure it's a copy and choose OK. Now you'll see that the mesh will pop back. That's simply because of the skin modifier. So all we need to do is go ahead and remove the skin modifier from the cloned mesh. And now it'll pop back. Alright, great. So from here, let's go ahead and press F4 to enter wireframe mode so we can start to sculpt this sniff shape while keeping track of the creature's topology. Alright, so selecting the mesh, we'll go ahead and go to our vertex of object level. Let's go ahead and grab a point right on the top of the nose. We'll use soft selection so we can get some very organic looking results. And let's also drop our fall off a bit more, so we're just influencing the nose area. I'll go ahead and make sure the fall off is set to about 7. Alright, great. So we can go ahead and just pull this up to create the sniff. Great. So now we can go ahead and exit our sub-object level. And now it's time to apply this to our base mesh. So this is where we get to use the Morpher modifier. With the base mesh selected, let's head over to our modifier list and we'll press the M key. Do that a few times until we're able to get right to the modifier. Here it is. Alright, so underneath our channel list rollout, here's where we apply those target meshes. So once we're done sculpting them, we'd assign them here so that we can go ahead and see that change on our base mesh. So let's go ahead and apply this target, and then we'll go ahead and take a look at some other settings that we'll definitely want to be aware of. I'll go ahead and right click on the first channel and we'll choose pick from scene, and now we'll go ahead and grab our target. So notice this icon right next to our channel, it's changed colors. It's changed from dark gray to green. To know exactly what has happened, we can scroll up until we find our channel color legend rollout. So here, this gives us an idea of exactly what Max is doing. So at the top, this is what we started with. There was no morph data, nor did we have anything applied to our channel, so we simply had this default color. Now, if there was no morph data, but the channel was modified in some way, we'd get this color. What we see now is the green color. That means that there is morph data. The morph data has been applied to our base mesh, and the target object still exists. Now, if we take a look at the next color, you can see that it means that there's morph data. The morph data has been applied to our mesh, but the target no longer exists. So this brings up a really interesting point. You can go in and delete your target mesh after it has been applied, because once it has been applied, it has been essentially baked to our base mesh. To show you this, I'm going to go ahead and take this target and I'm going to delete it. Now when we go back to our base mesh, take a look at the channel. It's now a blue color. But we can still use the expression, which is really cool. Now the downside is we can't sculpt any longer. If we wanted to sculpt, we'd have to revert back to another file that still had that target. Alright, so we need to be very mindful of this. Now a great workflow would be to delete all your targets when you're ready to hand the scene off to the animator and have them work with that lighter file. But for us as riggers, we'd want to keep the file with all of our targets in case any changes need to be made. So we'd want to most certainly keep that in mind. What I'm going to do is go ahead and undo back to bring back the target, just in case we need to make any changes. Alright, so there we have it. The target's brought back. Now, keep in mind, again, with the target brought back into the scene, we can go in and we can start to adjust the shape however we'd like. So what I'm going to do is go in and bring up the sniff to 100%. I'm now going to go back to the target. I'll go back to the vertex subobject. I'm going to bring up the nose a little bit higher. But notice we do not see that change on our base mesh instantly. If you'd like to see that change instantly, go back to the base mesh, scroll down, and simply turn on automatically reload targets. So now you can see that Max will refresh the morph modifier so that we can go ahead and see that update. Alright, great. Well, let's go ahead and see what happens when we start to scrub the animation. Let's make sure our sniff channel is up to 100% and we'll start to scrub. Notice we do not see the evaluation of our Morpher modifier, simply because of our current evaluation order in the modifier list. So currently Max is reading the skin modifier, but then that's being blocked by the Morpher modifier. In order to see the skin and the morph, we need to make sure that the morph will be evaluated and then the skin. So we simply want to left mouse button drag the morph modifier so it's between the skin and the editable poly format. And now take a look. We can still see the nose up while the animation will still play. Very nice. So that's something very important to keep in mind. Well, we are now ready to add some animation. So if you'd like, feel free to go in, take the target, just to kind of hide it, you can go to layers. You can go ahead and create a layer for all your target shapes. We can go ahead and just create a layer here, and we'll call it target layer. Keep it right to the point. Again, I'll make the default layer active, so everything that's added to the scene is automatically added here initially. And now we can go to our target layer and go ahead and just hide that. Alright, beautiful. So what I'll do is go ahead and press F4 just to hide the wireframe. We can select our creature and start to add some animation. I'll make sure we start from frame 0. I'll just hold down Control Alt. And I'll drag with the left mouse button this time over to our left so we can go ahead and hide that frame where we have saved the initial pose. Alright, so let's think about where the sniff should start happening. I'd say right when the creature tilts his head, on about frame 60. So we'll go there. We'll enable auto key so we can save time in the keying process. We can go to our Morpher modifier. And let's go ahead and make sure that we have a 0 key established on frame 60. We'll go ahead and just right click on the sniff channel to set that back to 0. Now, since our channel was already set to 100% before we turned on auto key, what that means is that the key on frame 0 that's automatically created will have this 100% value saved. So all we need to do is go to frame 0 and just delete that key. Let's go ahead and select it and choose delete, since that's not needed. The animation starts at 60. So just a few frames here after 60, let's say on frame 63, we'll go in and we'll bring the sniff up We just want this to happen after a few frames because this should be a pretty quick action. So fast sniff. Now on frame 66, let's go ahead and bring the nose down. It doesn't have to be brought down all the way. I'm bringing it to about 12% or so. That way we create a more natural animation where each pose isn't quite the same. Let's say we go ahead and bring the nose up on frame 70. And we'll have this hold for a little bit longer so it looks as if the creature's really trying to figure out what that smell is. So let's have that hold till about frame 79. We'll go there. We'll hold down shift and we'll right click on our sniff channel to hold that key. And now on about frame 85, let's go there and right click on our sniff channel to set it back to 0. Alright, so now we can go ahead and take a look at the animation. I'll turn off auto key. We'll grab some popcorn and we can go ahead and hit play. So the creature's looking around, does a cool sniff, and then looks back. How cool is that? So in this lesson, we have learned how to work with the Morpher modifier. Again, it's great to use for facial rigging animation, but we can use it for so much more. We can use it for corrective shapes. If you'd like to learn how to set that type of rig up, feel free to take a look at our rigging quadrupeds tutorial. And if you'd like to get more in depth with facial rigging, feel free to take a look at our facial rigging in 3ds Max tutorial. We cover some cool techniques and concepts that I think you'll really enjoy.